The tunnels of Outpost Delta 9 breathed like a tired beast, their rusting ribs groaning as air circulated in uneven gusts. Heat shimmered against the narrow bulkheads, ducts rattled above, and condensation dripped in slow, rhythmic beats that echoed Chase Summers' own footfalls. His shoulders brushed the sides of the passage, broad human muscle in a station designed for the slimmer Navarin species. Every scrape of his coverall fabric reminded him he didn't belong here, not in these maintenance guts, not in this orbiting relic, and not in this life he had chosen after Sarah's death. Dispatch, I'm approaching Junction T-14. He muttered into his cum, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of a scarred hand. Still no sign of the leak. Copy, Summers, came Pox's disinterested voice. Sensors still show anomalous readings. Could be a ghost signal, but we need confirmation. Ghost signals. Chase sighed. Bad excuse again. The outpost's sensors were older than he was, and twice as unreliable. He'd spent the last 5 years chasing phantoms down boiling tunnels like this, and he was too old to keep crawling through steel intestines for nothing. But as he adjusted his scanner, a new pattern flared across the readout, sharp, pulsing, almost rhythmic. He froze. The signal wasn't theirs. It didn't belong to Delta 9 systems at all. The frequencies shifted in ways no automated process could replicate, bouncing like a heartbeat, trying to sync with something beyond the static. He recalibrated, fingers moving with sudden urgency. The coordinates sharpened Proxima Station. Industrial sector. That's outside our jurisdiction, Pox barked when Chase reported in. Summers, just document it and head back. But Chase barely heard him. His gut clenched as he studied the pattern again. It wasn't random interference. It was deliberate, structured. He had lived through enough long nights watching Sarah waste away to no desperation when he heard it, even in digital form. The signal was a distress code old Earth standard, pre-unification. Nobody out here should even know it existed. Summers, do not engage. That's an order. He shut the cum off. Orders be damned. Something was wrong over there. And if command wouldn't see it, then he would dot 30 minutes later. His maintenance shuttle drifted into an abandoned loading bay on Proxima's industrial fringe. The sector was a mausoleum of dead warehouses and automated machinery that ticked and groaned like arthritic bones. The signal drew him to a squat building with faded medical symbols peeling from its walls. The door was unlocked. That, more than she. Anything set his nerves screaming. Inside, the air was cold and stale. Lights flickered overhead, illuminating rows of cages stacked like forgotten cargo. Shapes shifted in the shadows, creatures twisted by strange evolutions. Some hunched, some staring with too many eyes. A low chorus of whimpers and growls rippled through the corridors. Not loud, but relentless, the sound of misery too long contained. His boots crunched against grit as he walked deeper, guided by the rising ping of his scanner. That was when he saw her. The cage was small, barely large enough for its occupant to sit upright. Pressed against the bars was a girl. Not human, though close enough to cut him to the bone. Her skin glowed faintly violet under the flickering lights. Her tangled hair a fall of white snow over thin shoulders. But it was her eyes that arrested him, blue so luminous they seemed to drink the dimness, wide with fear and grief. Chase knelt, the bars creaking as he steadied himself. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice gentler than it had been in years. She flinched, but didn't retreat. Her fingers, slender and trembling, clung to the cage as though it were the only thing holding her together. He checked the datapad. Clipped to the door, Lorelian. Endangered. Age equivalent to 8 Earth years. Status, abandoned. Scheduled for research allocation. Research allocation. He knew corporate euphemisms well enough. It meant dissection, exploitation, experiments. on a child who should have been running free. His chest tightened. For a breath, he saw Sarah again, Sarah in her final days, eyes hollow but defiant, whispering that she hated being left alone. Not this one. Not again. With practiced precision, he disabled the magnetic seal. It gave way with a snap. The girl shrank back, stunned. Chase extended his hand. It's all right. I won't hurt you. Come on, little one. You're coming with me now. Hesitation stretched into an eternity. Then, slowly, feather-light fingers slid into his palm. She weighed nothing as he lifted her out. Nothing but fragile bones and the faintest hope. Alarms shrieked to life. Crimson. Lights strobing across the walls. A synthetic voice barked in an alien language, warning of containment breach. Time to go, Chase growled, tucking her into his arms. Heavy boots clattered in the distance. He ducked behind a crate as two insectoid guards clattered into the bay, mandibles clicking, their glossy exoskeletons reflecting the alarm lights. He set the girl down, whispering, "Stay." She clutched his sleeve, panic shimmering in her eyes. "I'll be right back," he promised. And for once, he meant it. Chase circled wide, tools already in hand. Years of maintenance had taught him more about environmental suits than most soldiers knew. He slipped behind the nearest guard, fingers moving fast. A spark, a crackle, and the regulator shorted. The creature convulsed, gasping, collapsing against the wall. The second turned in alarm. Chase swung a loading hook with all his weight. The crunch of chitin split the air. The guard fell motionless. "Sorry," Chase muttered, not meaning it at all. Thought the girl was where he left her, wide-eyed but steady. He scooped her back into his arms and sprinted toward the shuttle, alarms pounding in rhythm with his heart. Down one on Delta 9 would expect what came next. Not Pox, not Thorn, not the hunters already closing in. But Chase knew one thing with absolute clarity as the shuttle roared from the bay, flames licking behind him. He would burn half the galaxy before he let anyone put that child back in. A caged Chase kept his eyes fixed on the shuttle's readouts as the metal skeleton of Proxima Station dwindled in the rear sensors. His breath came ragged, his pulse refusing to slow, even as the black silence of space wrapped around him. Girl sat curled in the co-pilot's seat, clutching the straps as though they were the only thing keeping her anchored to existence. She hadn't spoken, hadn't made a sound beyond the faintest whimper when he'd first set her down. He tried again. "You understand me, don't you?" Her eyes flicked toward him, luminous blue against her violet skin. She gave the barest an OD. A spark of relief warmed him, but it vanished almost as quickly. She was still trembling, still watching every motion with the wary silence of a creature expecting another cage. "Right," he muttered, more to himself than her. "One problem at a time. First, we get back to Delta 9 without every security drone in this sector clawing down our throats." The Kung crackled to life, a sharp burst of static followed by a clipped voice. "Unscheduled departure from Bay. 17. Identify yourself immediately." Chase killed the transmission with a jab of his thumb. They'd be tracking the shuttle, if they weren't already. His only chance was to divert into the asteroid field that lay between Proxima and Delta 9. Maintenance vessels weren't built for speed, but their heavy shielding meant he could push closer to the rocks than any patrol ship would dare. "On," he warned, though she didn't answer. The shuttle jolted, engines straining as he dived into the scattered giants of stone and ice. The hull shuddered with every near miss, alarms squealing in protest. But after 20 minutes of gut-wrenching maneuvers, the sensors behind them finally cleared. They had lost pursuit for now. By the time Outpost Delta 9 loomed in view, Chase had rehearsed a dozen lies. He chose the simplest when control demanded an explanation. Leak at T-14 was worse than expected, he said evenly. Had to source parts from Proxima. Full report filed on return. There was a pause, too long for comfort. At last, docking clearance flickered green across the console. Relief washed through him, tempered by dread. Commander Thorne would have. Questions. Thorne always had questions. He glanced at the girl. She was staring at him with unnerving intensity, as though weighing something far heavier than her fragile frame suggested. Listen, Chase said quietly. They can't know you're here. You'll have to hide. Think you can do that? Her gaze shifted to the emergency storage compartment beneath the console. She tapped it once with a thin finger, then pointed to the oxygen masks strapped to the wall. Chase blinked, surprised. Smart kid, he murmured. He helped her slip inside the compartment, fitted the mask over her face. I'll come back for you. I promise. Docking clamps latched onto the shuttle. The hatch slid open, and Commander Thorne stood waiting, massive shoulders squared, his 3 eyes narrowing with suspicion. Summers, he growled. Explain. Chase forced his face into bland professionalism. Anomalous signal from Proxima Industrial Sector. Matched old Earth distress patterns. I investigated. Found evidence of illegal activity. Documented. Coordinates, that's all. Thorne's central eye twitched. Did you interfere? No, sir, Chase lied smoothly. Just gathered data. A long silence stretched between them, the hum of the docking bay echoing like a warning. At last, Thorne said, file your report. And next time, Summers, follow protocol. You're dismissed. Chase nodded stiffly, heart hammering until the commander's heavy footsteps receded. Only then did he return to the shuttle, open the compartment, and lift the girl into his arms. Her small hand clung to his sleeve, her trust as fragile as spun glass. He smuggled her through the shadows of the maintenance bay, every footstep echoing louder in his ears than the alarms had on Proxima. When the door to his quarters finally sealed shut behind them, the silence felt like sanctuary. The girl stood. In the middle of the cramped space, wide-eyed at the Spartan furnishings, the faint hum of the recycler, the glow of artificial lights. To her, this empty room might as well have been a palace. Home sweet home, Chase said, locking the door. Not much, but it's safe. She wandered, fingers brushing over fabric, metal, light. Wonder painted across her face, fragile but real. Chase watched her, an ache swelling in his chest. She needed more than shelter. She needed a name. How about Luna? He asked after a moment. Your skin reminds me of lilacs. And your eyes? They remind me of the moon after a storm. She tilted her head, considering. Then, softly, she nodded. Luna it is, Chase said. A small smile tugging at his lips for the first time in years. The comm unit on the wall chimed. Thorne's voice, sharp and cold, filled the room. Attention all personnel. Due to recent security concerns, a mandatory inspection of all living quarters will commence at 08:00 hours tomorrow. Ensure compliance. Unauthorized items or contraband will result in immediate disciplinary action. Chase's blood ran cold. He looked at Luna. She looked back, blue eyes wide with sudden fear. Well, he muttered, raking a hand through his short hair, that complicates things. He had less than 24 hours to figure out how to hide her, and he already knew nowhere on this station would ever be far enough. The bioluminescent glow in Naira's quarters shimmered like a living constellation. Vines coiled along the walls, leaves exhaling a subtle perfume of earth and rain, creating a forest in miniature in the heart of Outpost Delta 9. Chase had never set foot in here before few humans did. Verdani botanists were considered eccentric at best, dangerous at worst. But tonight, Naira had not only welcomed him and the Lorelian girl inside, she had offered them sanctuary, Luna, he still thought of her as Luna, though Nyara had whispered. Her true name, Elria, wandered among the plants, touching them gently as if they might whisper secrets back. Her pale hair caught the phosphorescent glow, giving her the look of something ethereal, fragile but radiant. Nyara watched her with a quiet intensity, then turned her gaze on Chase. "She trusts you," Nyara said, her voice carrying the melodic lilt of her people. "That isn't common for a Lorelian, especially one so young." Chase shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know why. I'm just a mechanic who is in the right place at the right time." Nyara stepped closer, the hem of her green robes brushing leaves as she moved. "Not just anything. She clings to you because you didn't hesitate. You acted when others would have walked away." Before Chase could answer, Elria froze. Her small hands clutched at her temples, and her wide eyes filled with terror. Chase knelt beside her instantly, his large hands trembling as he steadied her shoulders. "What's wrong?" The answer didn't come in sound. It came like a feather-light brush in his mind, fragile, alien, unmistakable. "Danger coming. Bad. Men from the cage place. They're looking for me." Chase's breath caught. "Nyara, did you hear that?" The Verdani botanist nodded gravely. "Yes, her abilities are stronger than I imagined." "She's projecting." "Projecting?" Chase repeated, his voice low. "Telepathic communication," Nyara explained, kneeling opposite him. "The Lorelians are famous for it, which is why they were hunted nearly to extinction. Raiders, scientists, slavers, they all covet what she is." She smoothed the hand gently across Elria's tangled hair, murmuring softly until the girl's trembling subsided. Chase clenched his jaw. "Then they're coming here. Those bastards tracked us." As if to confirm his fears, a station-wide announcement crackled overhead. Commander Thorne's harsh voice filled the quarters. "Attention all personnel. A Level 2 inspection has been authorized. Cooperate fully with inspection teams. Any resistance will result in immediate detention." The words dropped like a hammer. Elria whimpered, clutching Chase's arm. He gathered her into his lap, holding her as though he could shield her from the whole galaxy. "They convinced Thorne," he said grimly. "Or bought him." Nyara moved to a concealed panel in her wall and pressed her palm against it. With a hiss, it opened to reveal a sleek, crystalline communication array, woven with living vines. Lights pulsed as she began encrypting transmissions. "My Alliance contacts must know the hunters are already here. If we can get evidence into their hands, the traffickers lose their shield of legitimacy." Chase's eyes narrowed. Evidence doesn't matter if they take her before help arrives. Nyara turned back to him, her color-shifting eyes bright with resolve. "Then we leave. Tonight, through the maintenance shuttle bay. I've already prepared a malfunction in their surveillance grid." "You're full of surprises," Chase muttered, torn between admiration and disbelief. Her lips curved, but there was no humor in her expression. "You've seen only the surface." Before Chase could reply, the door chimed sharply once, then again, insistent. Elria stiffened in his arms. Her mental voice trembled through his thoughts. "The man with 3 eyes. Angry. He's here. Commander Thorne." Nyara's expression hardened. She pulled a small device from her desk and pressed it into Elria's hands. "This will mask your life signs for a short time. Hold it close, little one. Chase, take her through the access in my bathroom. It leads to the hydroponics bay. Wait for me there." Chase hesitated, heart thundering. His hand brushed Nyara's, fingers tangling for a fleeting moment. Her skin was cool, smooth, alive with some quiet current. She gave the faintest smile. Humans aren't the only ones who can be brave. On impulse, he bent and kissed her. It was quick, clumsy, but the spark it ignited stunned him. Her eyes widened and softened with answering fire. "That's for luck. he whispered. "A fascinating custom," she murmured, voice husky. "We'll discuss it further when we survive this." The chime grew sharper. Chase rose, Elria clutched against his chest and slipped toward the hidden passage. Behind him, Nyara straightened her robes, masking every trace of emotion as the door swished open. Through the crack in the bathroom's doorframe, Chase caught one last glimpse Commander Thorne stepping inside, his 3 eyes narrowing in suspicion. His presence filling the room like a storm cloud. Chase tightened his grip on Elria, her tiny fingers digging into his collar. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would not let them take her back. The shuttle bay smelled of ozone and cold metal, the way every escape should. Chase moved fast. Elria pressed tight against his chest, her life sign masker humming faintly in her small hands. The maintenance bay was dark, compared to the brightly lit docking ports. Its consoles half-functional, its patrol drones, conveniently, offline. Nyara's sabotage, subtle and precise. "Keep low," she murmured as she slipped ahead. Robes gathered, her silver hair braided back for practicality. In the half-light of the bay, her emerald skin glowed like a warning flare and a promise. Set Elria down only long enough to trigger the shuttle's hatch. The little girl clutched his arm, refusing to let go until the door hissed open. He lifted her inside, securing her in the co-pilot's seat, and spun to see Nyara sliding gracefully into the navigator's chair. "Engines online," she said, fingers dancing across the controls. "Security grid should remain blind for 7 minutes. That's all we'll need," Chase muttered, powering up the thrusters. The vessel rumbled awake, old but stubbornly reliable. He pushed it forward, easing from the bay, just as the cum crackled with Thorne's voice. "Unscheduled departure detected. Identify yourselves immediately." Chase flicked the channel off. "No more lies. Not tonight." He shoved the throttle forward, and the shuttle roared into the star-speckled void. They didn't make it 5 minutes before the hunters appeared. 3 sleek craft slid from Proxima's shadow, their angular hulls bristling with weapon pods. Their pursuit lights locked onto the shuttle, bathing the cockpit in a sickly red. "They're fast," Chase growled, checking the sensors. "Faster than us." Nyara's eyes narrowed. "But not cleverer." Before Chase could ask, the ship jolted, energy fire grazing their port side. The shields flared, alarms screaming in protest. Elria whimpered, covering her ears. Chase reached back, steadying her. "Hold on, kiddo. This is gonna get bumpy." The display lit up with warnings as the hunters closed in, weaving between them with practiced precision. Chase banked hard, skimming dangerously close to an asteroid cluster. Massive rocks drifted in slow rotation, their surfaces glittering with ice and ore. "You're flying into the field?" Nyara asked, bracing herself against the console. "Closer we stick to cover, the harder we are to target," Chase replied, through clenched teeth. "And if they're as arrogant as they look, they'll follow us right in." The shuttle plunged between 2 tumbling boulders, the hull shrieking from the gravitational strain. The hunters pursued, their smaller frames darting effortlessly. Chase ducked the vessel into a narrow canyon along an asteroid's surface, the walls closing in until it felt like he was threading a needle at full burn. "They're matching us," Nyara warned, her hands already rerouting power. "Then we change the rules." Chase's eyes flicked to the storm, looming in the distance, a maelstrom of violet light, space itself twisting as plasma currents tore through the void. A Class 5 ion storm, deadly, beautiful. Nyara followed his gaze, disbelief crossing her sharp features. "You cannot be serious." Chase grinned, reckless and defiant. "Maintenance shuttles are built with heavy aim shielding. We can survive a short dive. Their ships? Not so much." Or we fry along with them, Nyara shot back. Then we fry together, Chase said simply, his voice steady. But they're not taking her. Not ever. Elria's small voice brushed both their minds, thin but fierce. I trust you, something. Fierce ignited in Chase's chest. He pushed the throttle to maximum. The shuttle hurtled toward the storm, the hunters unleashing volley after volley of fire. One blast rocked the hull, another seared across their shields. But still the shuttle drove forward into the swirling tempest of energy. The moment they crossed the boundary, the world exploded into chaos. Electric fire cascaded across the hull. Alarms shrieking in chorus. The cockpit flickered, instruments dying and rebirthing under the storm's assault. The shuttle shook violently, threatening to rip apart at the seams. Nyara's hands flew across the console, her calm precision up. Counterpoint to Chase's raw instinct. Divert emergency power to forward shields. He barked, already done. She shouted back, her braid whipping around her face as the ship lurched behind them. One hunter craft peeled away, unwilling to risk annihilation. The other two pressed in, their outlines distorted by the storms. Fury. One took a direct hit from an energy surge, its hull erupting in sparks before it spun away into darkness. The last hunter, stubborn and relentless, clung to their tail. They're still on us, Nyara warned. Not for long, Chase muttered, yanking the controls hard and diving deeper into the storm's heart. The shuttle screamed, metal groaning, as though it would tear itself apart. The pursuing vessel tried to follow. It lasted 10 seconds. The storm swallowed it whole, energy currents ripping through its hull until it detonated in a brilliant cascade of light. Silence. Except for the storm's endless roar and the labored breathing of 3 fugitives. Nyara slumped against her console, her chest rising and falling. You did it, she whispered, awe mingling with disbelief. Chase shook his head, forcing a grim smile. We did it, but we're not out yet. Shields won't hold forever. For 20 more minutes they rode the storm's chaos, every second a battle to keep the shuttle intact. Systems failed one after another. Comms, long-range sensors, even life support sputtering dangerously. At one point, as alarms howled, Nyara reached across the console and grasped Chase's hand. Her eyes glowed gold in the flickering light. If we don't make it through, she began softly. Chase squeezed her hand, eyes locked on hers even as the ship bucked. This isn't the end of our story. Not here. And as if the universe itself answered, a sudden surge hurled them forward. A storm spat them out into clear, silent space, stars burning bright against the void. Chase exhaled, shoulders sagging. We made it. Not all of us, Nyara said, nodding at the battered consoles. The ship is barely alive. We'll need repairs and supplies. Ahead, distant but reachable, the chaotic sprawl of Ferox outpost flickered into view, a nest of smugglers, traders, and opportunists. Chase grimaced. From the frying pan into the fire. Elria stirred from her seat, lifting her head. Her mind brushed theirs again, faint and trembling. Bad place, greedy minds. Hungry for me. Her warning was enough to chill Chase more than the storm ever had. Courier shuttle limped into Ferox outpost's docking ring, every groan of its stressed hull echoing through the cabin. Outside the viewport, the outpost spread like a cancer across the void. Haphazard modules lashed together, glowing neon signs competing with the dull flicker of failing power grids. Ships of every design clung to its hull, smugglers and traders, moving in and out like insects swarming carrion. Chase felt his jaw tighten. Neutral territory, he muttered, which means no laws worth counting. Nyara adjusted the hood of her cloak, her voice calm but edged with caution. It means everyone is here to profit. That can cut either way. She turned to Elria, fastening a smaller cloak around her slight shoulders. Stay close to us. Little one, do not let go. Elleria nodded, though her wide blue eyes betrayed her unease. Chase reached down, squeezing her tiny hand. She sent the faintest brush of thought into his mind, bad place. Greedy minds. Hungry for me. The warning settled into his bones like ice. The docking hatch cycled open with a hiss, releasing them into a cacophony of sound and smell. The outpost's corridors pulsed with alien life. Traders shouting in half a dozen languages. The scent of spice and oil hanging heavy in the air. Bodies pressing close in the tight spaces. Chase kept one hand on Elleria's shoulder, the other resting near the concealed blaster under his cloak. They wound their way toward the central hub, where Nyara claimed they would find Dax, the information broker who had helped her alliance. Contacts before. Chase had reservations, but their options were limited. Without new identities and a ship, they wouldn't make it to the Lorelian colony. The central hub opened around them like a hollowed heart. Transparent walls revealed endless rivers of data streaming through conduits, cascading like waterfalls of light. At the chamber's center sat Dax, behind a curved obsidian desk. His elongated head bristled with 6 independent eye stalks, each swiveling in a different direction, tracking half a dozen conversations at once. Ah, Dax purred through the translator grafted into his throat, his voice a silken rasp. Nyara of the Verdani. Profitable to see you again. Dax, Nyara replied coolly, inclining her head. We require your services. Quietly. Those twitching eye stalks turned toward Chase and Elleria, lingering too long on the small hooded figure at his side. And who are these companions? So rare, so interesting. Chase shifted his stance, positioning himself between Elleria and the broker's gaze. We need new identities and transport to the Cygnus Reach, he said flatly. Direct, Dax mused. How refreshing. And expensive. One thin finger tapped the desk. But perhaps we may negotiate. Credits are common, yes, but information. Information is priceless. Rare specimens, rarer still. His stalks lingered on Elleria again. Not for sale, Chase snapped, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. Everything has a price. Human, Dax purred. The Proxima facility, for instance, offers quite the bounty for a Lorelian child. The Krell Dominion would pay double. Imagine the bidding war. A hiss sounded as the chamber door sealed behind them. From hidden panels, 4 guards emerged hulking, chitinous creatures clutching disruptor rifles. Elleria shrank against Chase's leg. His hand went instinctively to his blaster, but Nyara's hand caught his wrist. Her eyes burned, not with fear, but with warning. You've made a serious mistake, Dax, Chase said, forcing calm into his voice. You think you've trapped U.S., but you're sitting on something far more valuable than a child. The broker tilted his elongated head. Oh, enlighten me. Chase leaned forward, voice low, deliberate. The Proxima shelter isn't just selling children. It's a trafficking network across 17 systems. Sentient beings bought and sold under false research designations. My allies are compiling evidence, and I know where the rest is hidden. The Galactic Commerce Guild would pay more for that proof than you'd ever make selling one girl. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then Nyara caught the cue. Her voice, sliding smoothly into the opening. The Alliance has been building a case for months. Summer's testimony is the missing piece. With it, Proxima falls. And any broker associated with aiding us stands to profit far more than through petty auctions. Dax's eye stalks quivered, flicking between greed and calculation. Intriguing, he murmured, but unverified. Chase's lip curled. Look around, Dax. How many of your clients would run if the guild knew what they were buying? How much business would you lose if a fleet showed up tomorrow? Protect us, and the guild never hears about Ferox. Betray us, and you'll be first on their blacklist. For the first time, the broker hesitated. His stalks twitched toward a monitor, showing incoming ships. "The Proxima hunters have already docked," he said slowly. "They are determined." Elria's mental voice whispered urgently into Chase's thoughts. 3 corridors away, weapons ready. Coming now. Chase stood, his palm steady on his. "Blaster, here's my offer, Dax. Help us walk out of here, and you keep your precious profit. Sell us, and this whole outpost burns with you." A long silence stretched, broken only by the hum of data streams. At last, Dax inclined his head, eye stalks dipping in concession. A compelling argument. "Very well, human. I find your terms acceptable." He tapped his desk, opening a hidden panel in the floor. "This shaft leads to docking bay 7. My personal courier is prepped for the Cygnus reach. New identities as promised." He slid a dataship across the desk. "Consider it an investment." As Chase scooped up the chip, Dax leaned closer, his eye stalks converging unnervingly. "Most fascinating, you humans. Physically unimpressive, yet consistently underestimated. I begin to see the whispers are true." Chase frowned. "Whispers?" "That in a galaxy of predators, humans are the most dangerous adapters of all." Dax replied, a glint of amusement in his voice. The walls shook as distant weapons fire reverberated through the outpost. Dax smiled, thin and cold. "The hunters are otherwise occupied. Best move quickly." Chase ushered Elria toward the shaft. Nyara closed behind. For the first time since Proxima, a sliver of hope cut through the fear. They had a ship, new names, and one more chance. But as they descended into the maintenance shaft, Chase couldn't shake the unease crawling under his skin. Dax had helped them, but only because it suited him. And somewhere beyond Ferox outpost's walls, predators were still circling. The courier vessel Dax had given them slid away from Ferox outpost, like a shadow, its engines whisper quiet compared to the rattletrap shuttle they'd nearly died in. For the first time in days, the stars shone steady in the viewport. No storm tearing at the hull, no alarm shrieking. Chase slumped back into the pilot's seat, exhaustion dragging at his muscles. He had expected betrayal, an ambush, maybe. A bomb planted in the engines. But the vessel obeyed every command smoothly, purring like a predator tamed. Ulria crept into the cockpit, bare feet silent on the deck. She had shed her cloak, and now wore one of the smaller tunics Chase had scavenged. It was still too big for her, the sleeves swallowing her thin arms. But she looked almost like any child might except for the violet skin, the gleaming white hair, and those eyes that seemed too old for her years. She climbed into the co-pilot's seat, legs dangling, and tilted her head at him. "You ever flown before?" Chase asked, keeping his voice light. A flicker of thought brushed his mind, feather soft. "First time, I am not afraid." The simple words tightened something deep in his chest. He reached out, ruffling her hair. "Get used to it, kiddo. We're going to be spending a lot of time together." Nyara entered then, carrying a tray of nutrient packs. She had discarded her hood as well, letting her silver hair spill freely over her shoulders. Even in the dim cockpit light, her emerald skin seemed to shimmer faintly. She set the tray down, her movements graceful, unhurried, so different from Chase's heavy-footed, pragmatic presence. And yet, he realized, they had moved together in perfect sync since the moment this madness began. "The systems are stable," she reported, lowering herself into the navigator's chair. Dax was true to his word. "This vessel is shielded. And fast. If we maintain course, we'll reach Cygnus Reach in 3 days." Chase raised a brow. "Trustworthy, our friend Dax?" "That's not a word I'd put near him." Nyara's lips curved faintly. "Not trustworthy, pragmatic. We were worth more alive than dead. That is the only currency men like him understand." Elria shifted in her seat, reaching for one of the nutrient packs. She sniffed it cautiously, then tasted. Her small face brightened with cautious approval. Nyara chuckled softly. She is adapting faster than I expected. Chase watched her chew, felt warmth stir where once only grief had lived. Sarah's memory rose unbidden, the pale face of his wife, the hospital light flickering across hollowed cheeks. He had buried himself in the station's metal guts to silence that pain. But now, here in the cockpit with a strange child, and an alien botanist, he felt something dangerous and new. Hope. The next 2 days passed in a rhythm that felt almost domestic. Chase ran system checks and taught Elria the basics of the control panels. Nyara coaxed bioluminescent vines from sealed pods she'd smuggled aboard, filling the sterile cabin with a breath of green. At night, when Elria slept, Chase and Nyara found themselves lingering together in the observation dome, watching stars crawl past. On the final night before reaching the colony, Elria surprised them both by speaking aloud. Her voice was small, halting but clear. Safe? Soon? Chase's throat tightened. He crouched before her, hands on her small shoulders. Yeah, Luna Elria, safe soon. I promise. She pressed her forehead briefly to his chest, then slipped back to her bunk, leaving him staring after her with a hollow ache in his chest. He realized then he wasn't lying. For once, he truly believed his own words. Later, under the domes. Starlight, Nyara stood beside him, her gaze following Elria's slumbering form through the glass partition. She will thrive among her kind, she said softly. They will teach her to master her gifts, to grow without fear. And us? Chase asked quietly. He hadn't meant to, but the words escaped like a confession. Nyara turned to him, her eyes shifting from emerald to molten gold. The Alliance always needs allies with your particular talents. Rescue, defiance, ingenuity. But beyond missions, Chase. She reached out, her hand resting against his arm. The Verdani do not take lightly the kind of bond we shared before leaving Delta 9. For us, it is more than comfort. It is joining. His breath caught. He remembered that night in her quarters, the way her cool skin had shivered against his, the way her laughter had broken through the storm inside him. He had told himself it was desperation, two fugitives clinging to life. But looking into her eyes now, he knew it had been more. On the third day, the Lorelian colony revealed itself, crystalline structures suspended within an asteroid's hollow heart, their spires gleaming with captured starlight. Floating gardens shimmered with iridescent plants, their leaves humming faintly with psychic resonance. Elria pressed her face to the viewport, her eyes wide with wonder. For the first time since Chase had met her, she looked like what she truly was, a child, full of joy. As the courier descended, a delegation of elders awaited. Their skin shared Elria's violet hue, their eyes reflecting the same deep blue seas. They wept openly when they saw her, their voices trembling with recognition. Of lineage long thought lost. Elria ran into their arms, laughter ringing like crystal chimes. Chase felt his heart squeeze, torn between relief and the sudden fear of letting her go. But then Elria turned, eyes locking on his. She reached out a hand, not just to him, but to Nyara too. And in that silent, unspoken invitation, Chase understood. Family wasn't about blood, wasn't about species. It was about choice. That night, under the crystalline canopy of the colony's gardens, he sat with Nyara at his side and Elria asleep in his lap. For the first time in years, he wasn't just surviving. He was living, but deep within the colony's crystal archives. Alliance scribes were already decrypting the data Elria carried unknowingly in her mind, a shard of something older, more dangerous. And when Chase's name appeared in the files linked to the original distress signal, a truth weighted that none of them expected. The crystal chamber pulsed with a living light, as though the walls themselves were breathing. Chase stood stiffly just inside the threshold, his hands balled into fists at his sides, every muscle taut. The Lyrelian elders had summoned him alone, but Nyara had insisted on entering at his shoulder, and Elria clung to his hand with quiet insistence. He would not leave her again, not to cages, not to researchers, not to anyone. The elders moved in a slow circle around them, their robes glittering with woven crystal threads. Their eyes deep, oceanic blue like Elria's glowed faintly in the chamber's psychic resonance. They began to hum, a layered sound that wasn't entirely physical. Chase felt it as a pressure behind his eyes, a thrum in his chest, a whisper. At the edges of thought, Elria whimpered, clutching tighter at his arm. Nyara bent, soothing her in the Vergani tongue, but the elders gestured gently. "She is the key," one of them said, their voices blending into a chorus. The shard was hidden within her, implanted by those who trafficked her kind. It carries memory. It carries a voice. What kind of voice? Chase demanded, his voice gravel rough. The chamber brightened, crystalline facets igniting like stars. Elria stiffened, her small frame trembling, eyes wide as if staring at something only. She could see. Then, impossibly, Chase heard it too. A voice he knew better than his own. "Chase?" He froze. His breath caught like a blow to the chest. The voice was warm, human, achingly familiar. Sarah's voice. His Sarah. No. The word broke from him, raw and fractured. That's not possible. Elria's eyes filled with tears. She pressed both hands to her temples, her telepathic links straining under the weight of the shard. The voice echoed again, clearer now, resonating across the crystalline chamber. "Chase, they took pieces of me, trapped me." In the signal, Chase staggered forward as if the floor had tilted beneath him. His memories of Sarah, her laughter, her final fragile smile in the hospital bed, collided violently with this impossible sound. "Sarah died," he whispered. "I buried her." And Nyara's hand gripped his arm, grounding him. Her eyes shimmered gold-green, steady and unflinching. It is not her as she was. It is an echo, a mnemonic seed. They took fragments of dying minds, human and otherwise, and weaponized them. Used them to build their lure signals. The elders' voices wove together, solemn and grave. Proxima traffickers captured Sarah Summers' final neural patterns. They embedded them in a distress beacon. It was her memory that called you, Chase. Not chance. Not fate. It was her echo reaching for you through the girl. Chase's knees nearly buckled. He pressed a hand to the cool crystal wall, sucking in breath after ragged breath. He had thought finding Elria was coincidence. He had thought his reckless rescue was born of grief. But no, Sarah's last imprint had led him straight here. Elria's mind brushed his again, fragile but insistent. "She lives in me." But it hurts. Chase dropped to one knee, gathering the trembling child into his arms. "Then we'll fix it," he said fiercely. "We'll free you both." The elders bowed their heads. "The shard can be extracted. It will reveal much proof of Proxima's crimes, names of their patrons. But extraction is perilous. If mishandled, it could destroy the child's mind." Nyara's voice was iron. "Then we do it carefully, together." As the ritual began, Elria lay at the center of the chamber, Nyara's cool hand resting on her brow, while Chase gripped her small fingers like an anchor. The crystal walls pulsed, light refracting until the air shimmered with memory. Sarah's voice swelled one final time, filling Chase's mind like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "You found her. You found me. Don't stop now." The shard fractured. Data cascaded into the elders' archives, files, coordinates, ledgers of trafficked beings across 17 systems. Among them, a single name burned brighter than the rest. Commander Thorn. Chase's eyes went cold. His commander, his tormentor, the man who had nearly exposed Elria on Delta 9, he wasn't just complicit. He was a shareholder in the network. The elders gasped as the data kept spilling, revealing something worse. A map of hundreds of mnemonic shards seated across the rim. Not just Sarah, not just one stolen voice. An entire chorus of the dead, twisted into lures, bait to snare the desperate and the grieving. The chamber dimmed. Elria stirred weakly, her eyes fluttering open. Gone, she whispered aloud, her voice small but clear. The bad piece is gone. Chase cradled her against his chest, heart pounding with equal parts relief and fury. He pressed his lips to her hair. I've got you. You're safe. When he looked up, Nyara's gaze met his, fierce and steady. Thorn will come for her. Again, for both of us. And now we know he's not alone. This was only the beginning. The elders spoke as one. The guild must be told. The traffickers must fall. Chase rose slowly, Elria in his arms, Nyara at his side. For the first time in years, his grief no longer hollowed him. It burned like fire in his veins. Sarah's echo had led him here, to a new family and to a war worth fighting. And when Nyara stepped closer, her voice a low promise meant only for him. We are not finished, Chase, not by far. He believed her. Outside, stars shimmered in the artificial sky of the hidden colony. Inside, Chase Summers swore an oath to himself, to Sarah's memory, and to the girl who had saved him as much as he had saved her. No more cages. Not for Elria, not for anyone.